Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm filming this one with my iPad because my phone is dead. And the VVTAR camera, the camcorder I got, cheap ass camera. It's not good. I'm mostly using it for like B-roll type stuff because because the lack of quality actually kind of gives it sort of a cool type of, I don't know, makes it cool for B-roll. You can film some stuff with it, but it fucks up the video, and then you gotta edit, you gotta cut the shit out of it, split the shit out of it. Um, it's not a good camera, but it was only like $100. But I'll try to get a better camcorder soon. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Today I'm here to talk about anarchism. So my videos have mostly been about like exercising, working out, skateboarding, martial arts, in hiking. I take you through some trails near me, but today I want to get into my political opinions because that's also what I want this channel to be about. Is sort of some cool political commentary here and there. So I'm an anarchist. I mentioned it in my introduction video. I don't know how many of you saw that or how many of you remember, but I'm an anarchist. Specifically, I'm a mutualist. So anarchism, there's a lot to unpack. So I'll start off with mutualism because that's what I am. Mutualism was the first the first person to openly call themselves an anarchist. So people will say anarchism has existed for a long time, but the first person to literally use the word anarchist and say I am an anarchist and give it that meaning, and kind of classify it was Pierre Joseph Proudhon, French politician. He was a mutualist. Mutualism existed before anarchism. Mutualism has always sort of been like a labor movement strategy type thing, but he made he was the first anarchist, and he was also a mutualist. He was a little bit of a controversial figure. Some anti-Semitism, some misogyny, but this was back in the 1800s, and I don't think that's really part of like what any modern day mutualist would say they believe in. Mutualism is mostly about an idea for the economy. Mutualism to me is like so it's free market, but it's also socialist at the same time. It's free market socialism, which sounds like an oxymoron, but socialism has never really been fully about planned economies or specifically or has socialism as a whole has never fully decided that it is fully against markets. And if you look at countries like China, which I think is socialist, I think China is a socialist country, but they operate on a lot of free market principles, and I think they got those ideas from mutualism. If you read about Deng Xiaoping's theories, it's really similar to like if you had like mutualism but with a state or something like that, So, but they have to dress it up in all like Marxist language because of the legacy that Mao created. So that's my opinion. So, but mutualism, it's like to me it's like economic democracy meets free markets. So you have like a free market, but also you have like full economic democracy, and this basically means like we still have individual independent enterprises. To me, a planned economy is a fully planned economy. You have no independent enterprises. No enterprise is independent. You are all subject to the plan. That's why I like mutualism because it's socialism, but it keeps in place the independent enterprise. This business is separate from this business. They are separate entities. You know what I'm saying? And that's a requirement, I think, to have a market. You can't have a market and subject every business to the same plan. That goes against what a market is. But planning is done within there's planning that's done, but it's done democratically within each enterprise. So even in capitalism, you have planned economies. It just takes place within that individual enterprise. So let's say there's a book called like the People's Republic of Walmart. It talks about how Walmart is like this giant planned economy, right? But it's also just Walmart, and there are other businesses. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So it's almost like capitalism, but if all the workplaces were democratic, and well, mutualism really is like mutualism is most importantly about like mutual aid, and that's why I wrote this article for a Libertarian Party organization about my mutualist ideas, and it's basically and Sarah Horowitz, who works for the New York Federal Reserve, or did, she wrote a book on mutualism. She's not an anarchist and she's not a socialist, but she is just a plain mutualist. And she wrote a book on mutualism, and it inspired me because she put forward the idea, like, how do you build a safety net? Like the safety net wasn't just created by the government. The safety net was created by the working class, and the government took it and institutionalized it. You know what I'm saying? So people fought for it, you know? So it's like, but the safety net is old and outdated now. So how do you build a new safety net? You have to literally create, the citizens themselves have to literally create this new structure for the next form of welfare. So I had the idea for like sort of cooperatives, communes, and syndicates. I touched on this briefly in another video, but basically the cooperative. So let's talk about the cooperative. So mutualism is first and foremost about like cooperative enterprises, I think, or at least that's what it's become. But then so the cooperative is the individual enterprise, like I was talking about, and the commune is sort of like a consortium where different individual cooperatives gather. And the syndicate is your cooperative within the commune. You know what I'm saying? So, and I had this idea for how it could be like an anarchist safety net or something like that. But yeah. So anyway, you also have like anarcho-communism, which I'm not a communist. I consider myself a communist, but not. I consider myself a socialist, but not a communist, because to me, communism is what's against markets. You know what I'm saying? Communism, there's no way you can make communism support markets. Socialism can be open to markets, but communism is not. There's markets are a no-go. So I'm not a communist, but I consider communism to be a form of socialism. I consider socialism to be like the umbrella term, and communism is one form, probably the most popular form of socialism, but still. So anarcho-communism, I don't even really bother with it. It's more violent, and it's more like it's like somehow a planned economy, but there's no state. Not really a planned economy, but sort of like I don't know. There's ideas for like there's different forms of it. I guess there's like the fully democratic version where basically life is just democracy, and it operates more sort of like a gift economy, sort of. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even know how that works. I don't know if anyone really knows how that would work, but mutualism I can wrap my head around. Yeah. And you have anarcho-capitalism, which a lot of people will say is not anarchism, but a lot of times anarcho-capitalists are nicer to me than anarcho-communists are, because we share a belief in markets, you know, and I've met a lot of anarcho-capitalists on Discord who are also mutualists, and I have barely met any communists who would also call themselves mutualists. So so on Reddit, there's a controversy here in this debate, because on Reddit you have this whole political compass ball movement, and it's sort of like we're creating the future of politics here, and you have these little balls. They're cartoons, and they represent different political ideologies, and they have a whole wiki for it where they explain its spot on the political compass. You know, the political compass is not just left and right, but it's also up and down. You have left and right, and you have authoritarian and libertarian. But a lot of people don't fuck with the political compass because they don't like Reddit, or like it's a meme thing. But the political compass nerds would tell you that mutualism is libertarian centrist. It's all the way on the bottom of the compass, but it's in the center. Libertarian centrist. And I fucked with that for a long time. I really did. But then I realized, like, I don't know. It's hard because anarcho-capitalists sometimes are more accepting of mutualists, but they are also like way more offensive, you know. And communists aren't so offended by mutualists as long as you consider yourself like also to be also a leftist. You know what I'm saying? So like you can, if you're a mutualist, you can fit in with communists if you see yourself on the left, which the hardcore communists, they would say anarcho-capitalism is not anarchy because all anarchism is on the left, and they would include mutualism. They might have some shit to say here and there, but if you're a mutualist and you consider yourself a leftist, that is, you would fit in with the more anarcho-communists. But if you're a mutualist and you're really into the Reddit type stuff and you consider yourself a libertarian centrist and you really focus more on free markets, you might fit in with more anarcho-capitalists. But I talked to someone and they said basically they heard someone say one time, I guess, and this made sense to me, that the mutualists are the translators between the anarcho-capitalists and the anarcho-communists, because the way I see it, at the end of the day, anarchism and ideology, you can't really have an anarchist ideology. You can have an anarchist ideology, but it's more like a prediction, because it's more like, when you get rid of the state, what do you think will happen? Because anarchism itself is against forcing anything. So you can't be it would be oxymoronic for an anarchist to try to force a certain system on the people, but they still believe in anarchism, but they have different predictions about what would happen. You know what I'm saying? So you have the anarcho-capitalists that say, if we get rid of the state, we're going to have free market capitalism. You have the anarcho-communists that say, if you get rid of the state basically is what makes us capitalist, and if you get rid of the state, you're going to have anarcho-communism. They're different predictions, and that's what makes anarchism so interesting, is that it's about predicting the future. It's not about taking what you believe and forcing it on other people. It's, you want to get rid of the state, but no one knows what will happen after that. And there are some things you can do, like dual power, which can build up to it. Dual power is actually used in the Soviet Union when they had the provincial government, provisional government, before they became the USSR officially, fully. They had a provisional liberal government, and I think it was, I don't even know so much about like Marxist history. I used to, but because I used to be a Marxist, but I guess it was Lenin maybe, who made up dual power, and he basically, because you had different centers of power. You had the provisional government and you had the Soviets, you know, and so that's what he called dual power. But anarchists have taken the idea of dual power and sort of linked it to mutual aid, where you can build up this mutual aid network, and your mutual aid network is the other power center, and that building up that mutual aid network will make the state collapse. And it's not another government like the Soviets were. It's just it's creating the anarchist society, and then the anarchist society gets so big that the state collapses, and then you continue on with full anarchy. So that's sort of the anarchist version of dual power, and that's also what I like about mutualism, because that mutualism stresses that the most. Mutualism stresses that the most, and it's to me about like preparing for anarchism. You know, when the state collapses, we're gonna need a way to continue doing a lot of these things that the government used to do. You know, I'm not the type of anarchist that wants to get rid of all the things that the government does right now. I want it to be handled differently and more and better, but we have to prepare to fulfill that role in a more voluntary way, you know. So it's about preparation, you know, like a prepper, you know what I'm saying? Is the mutualists are like the anarchist preppers, you know what I'm saying? They're preparing society for anarchism, because they're not violent. They don't want to just overthrow the state violently. They want to peacefully set up mutual aid networks, so when the state collapses, they can create a new system right away, you know. So but it's sort of, so the way I see it, mutualism is not necessarily about like any specific given property rights framework. It's about a diversity amongst different forms of property. So and that's like voluntarious to me. That's so voluntarious to me. Voluntarism is like wanting things to be voluntary. And I sort of like voluntarism, even though it's seen as right wing, more linked to anarcho-capitalism. But I think there's some guy wrote a book, Francis Dashwood Tandy. I might have talked about him already, but he wrote a book. I think I talked about him in one of my discussions with Phil. He wrote a book called Voluntary Socialism, and in the 1800s, and this was before anarcho-capitalism even existed. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is that that diverse property, diverse forms of property. So right now, private property is dominant, and that's what I consider capitalism, when private property is dominant. Now, I'm not a private property abolitionist, but I think the state definitely promotes private property and reinforces it and keeps it in place, and to the detriment of all other forms of property. And so I want there to be more cooperative property, more social property, more communal property, but I want private property to still exist alongside of all that. You know what I'm saying? And so you don't have one dominant form of property, and that to me is a more decentralized economy, when you have different property regimes existing next to each other in a sort of panarchist fashion. So panarchism, I used to be really into panarchism. It's the idea that government is separate from territory. So you would have like my neighbor could follow a different government than I do, my next door neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Because you just like sign a contract for it, and it could be a global market of governments, if you want to call it that, where you get to choose your government no matter where you live. But that's panarchism. And that's sort of like proto-anarcho-capitalism. It's sort of more mutualist, but it's like on the way to anarcho-capitalism, you know, like sort of it went from mutualism to panarchism and then developed into anarcho-capitalism, stuff like that. Yes, I'm wearing the same shirt as yesterday, the ODB shirt. Sorry about that, but you know, I be lazy with my clothes sometimes. But anyway, yeah, and it's about like mutualism is about like it's a market, but there's supposed to be no coercion. All exchanges are supposed to be mutually beneficial. So like if I exchange something with you and you exchange something with me, we are both equally better off by the exchange, and no one's taking advantage of anyone. No one's taking advantage of anyone. And it's supposed like equal exchange, you know. And in the theory, the way you create that is if you have these democratic workplaces, then it's a democratically decided on exchange. You know what I'm saying? So you have like it's about like a social contract made up of all the different contracts. So each contract is like its own mini social contract, and that's a voluntary social system where the social contract is not a constitution, but it's rather all the legitimate contracts that exist together. And if these legitimate contracts are made up of different workplaces, which they democratically decide on this, then that's when you have mutual exchange. That's my theory, you know what I'm saying? That's sort of, I pieced that together through reading various sources, but I don't know if anyone has officially said that yet, but that's my theory behind it. Yeah, what else is there to say? Yeah, so some of you may have seen my tattoo or whatever. My mutual. First of all, I'll show you my two tattoos right here. So this one is from an anime, Skate the Infinity, an anime about skateboarding. That's sort of the logo. And I liked it. I liked the meaning behind it, and I liked the show, so I got it. But that's beside the point. But I wanted to show you both just because I mentioned tattoos. But this is my newest tattoo. It's the voluntarist symbol and the mutualist symbol, and this right here is Chinese characters with my Chinese astrology. So rat, ox, serpent. Those are my Chinese astrology signs, and the reason I connected the Chinese astrology to it is because now I told you that Pierre-Joseph Proudhon was the first person to officially call himself an anarchist, like the word anarchist. But many people say that anarchist ideas have been around since Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, the author of the Tao Te Ching, a very old Chinese religious text on Taoism. And Taoism is sort of where anarchist ideas originate in ancient China, basically, with Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching. But no one knew the word. The word anarchist wasn't around. You wouldn't have called yourself like, oh, I'm an anarchist. You know what I'm saying? You would have just been like a Taoist, and it would have been your religion. But I take a lot of inspiration from Taoism. You saw my Taoism and martial arts video. I love to read Taoist texts, and it is very libertarian. But a lot of folks will say like, oh, you shouldn't like apply this Western idea of anarchism to this Eastern idea of Taoism. But it's undeniable that the Tao Te Ching is the first in history that we see these such libertarian ideas compiled together. It's undeniable to me. So yeah. But you also have individualist anarchism, which I can't wrap. I don't even know what individualist anarchism is about. I know mutualism is supposed to be a form of individualist anarchism, but it's also called the synthesis of communism and property. So there you can see it's sort of like in the middle between social and individual anarchism. In like the translators, as that guy said, and because it's supposed to be mutual. The way I see it is it's a mutual relationship between the individual and society. Society gives to the individual gives to society in a mutual relationship. So I don't think mutualism, to me, in my opinion, shouldn't be classified as individualist anarchism. But a lot of mutualists would say they are individualist anarchists. But a lot of anarcho-capitalists would say they are individualist anarchists, and a lot of communists would probably say they are individualist anarchists. Individualism is sort of a side philosophy that you can apply to any other form of what you believe. It doesn't have much to say about the literal economy. You have Stirner, the egoism, which is just about like egoism, like having ego. You know what I'm saying? And that really has nothing to do with like the structure of the economy. And you have like philosophical anarchism, which is basically just like, I don't believe in the state, but I don't want to push for an anarchist society right now, but I'm going to use my anarchist philosophy to critique the state. And that's sort of the lowdown on individualist anarchism, other than its connection to mutualism. But I think individualist anarchism is becoming co-opted by capitalists, which is why I don't really, I don't know. I'm friends with capitalists. I believe in libertarian unity. So that's another political compass ball, Reddit nerd type thing. Libertarian unity amongst the left libertarians and the right libertarians, and the libertarian centrists. And because you have these ideas of left unity, right unity, auth unity, lib unity. Left unity is if like the left libertarians teamed up with the left authoritarians. Right unity is if like the right authoritarians teamed up with the right libertarians teamed up with the right authoritarians. And auth unity is if all the people on top, the left authoritarians and the right authoritarians, join together. But I just believe in liberty in all way, shape, and form. I believe in freedom so much that like any form of it is more acceptable to me than any form of authoritarianism. I hate all forms of authoritarianism. If there's one thing that truly describes me, it's anti-authoritarian, just right there, But so I believe in libertarian unity, and what was I gonna say? Sorry, I just got a notification. I forgot what I was gonna say, but it was related to the political compass, libertarian unity. So, well, I don't know. Anyway, this I'm just gonna end the video because it's gone on for like 25 minutes now, and I can make more videos on anarchism if you want me to, but that's sort of my quick introduction rundown to my opinion of mutualism and anarchism in general. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and comment if you are starting to get interested in anarchism or what type of anarchist you are. I'm accepting of all different opinions, you know what I'm saying? So, it's all good, but But when I'm accepting of all different opinions until it becomes force, until it becomes you forcing it on someone else, and that's when I start to get not so accepting. Because if you can't win with the power of an idea, and you have to force someone to believe something, that's wrong to me. So, anyway, peace.